Hey guys, tonight we descend, quite literally, into one of the darkest corners of Victorian London. Not a haunted house, not a crumbling alley. No, far worse. We're talking about the sewers. The vast, sloshing, gas hissing, rat infested underworld beneath the cobblestones, where a peculiar breed of men known as Toshers made their living, or tried to. Imagine a job that combined metal detecting, spelunking, and mild self destruction, all while wading through other people's, let's call it, legacy. You, dear listener, are now a Tosher, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You duck beneath a rusting iron grate behind a tannery on Shadwell's edge, boots already damp from Thames mist. The city groans overhead, cartwheels, horses, muffled voices, the occasional yell followed by running. But here, below the noise and soot, it's another world. You grip your bag tighter, its worn leather strap digging into your shoulder, and step carefully down the slippery brickwork into a tunnel that smells like someone boiled cabbage in despair. The first thing that hits you, apart from the scent, is the temperature. It's warmer than outside, sure, but in the way a compost heap is warm. Not comforting, just vaguely threatening. Your breath fogs, mixing with the murky air, thick with methane, rotting fish, and what one Victorian surgeon politely called human discharge byproducts. Romantic, really. A faint splash echoes ahead. You're not alone. Whether it's a rat, a rival, or something else entirely is unclear. You steady your rake, a long curved metal hook with all the defensive value of a bent knitting needle, and press on. The water isn't deep yet, just ankle height. A suspicious gray-brown. Don't ask what's floating. Don't think about the slick that just brushed your shin. Don't. You move slowly, one eye on the surface and the other on the tunnel walls. Anything metal might be worth something. A dropped coin, a scrap of copper, a rusted pipe bracket, sometimes even jewelry. Londoners were careless when inebriated, and Victorian pubs overflowed, sometimes literally into the streets. Gravity, as always, did the rest. Your job is to find the bits they lost. Your punishment is everything else. The tunnel narrows, ceiling lowering to just above your head. You duck instinctively, the walls slick with moss and history. That's the funny thing. Historians still argue whether Toshers were brave scavengers, helping reduce urban waste, or petty thieves poking about where they weren't wanted. Truth is, you don't have time for that debate. Rent's due. Again. And the landlord doesn't accept IOUs scrawled on cabbage leaves. Behind you, a soft chittering. Rats. You don't bother looking back. They don't bother you unless you step on one. And even then, they only bite if they're in a mood, which, being rats in a sewer, they usually are. You stop at a spot where the tunnel widens. There, in the beam of your lantern, yes, open flame in a methane chamber, but let's not dwell, is a glint. Not gold, just brass. A belt buckle. You fish it out, wipe it on your sleeve, and drop it into the sack. One down, 30 more, and you can afford a half loaf of bread. 2 if it's stale. As you wade onward, the air thickens. You know from experience that means another main pipe is nearby. Larger tunnels feed into this one, and where the flow is stronger, the findings are better. Also more dangerous. More water, more gas, more surprises. Once, A Tosher in Holborn vanished during a flash flood. The sewer coughed him up. 2 days later in Chelsea, fully dressed, but notably annoyed. Still, there's a rhythm to this. Splash, rake, squint, pluck, sack. You hum to yourself, something vaguely cheerful. The sound dies immediately in the stone tunnel, swallowed like it was never born. Then, a thud. You freeze. No movement, just a heavy echo. You wait. Nothing. You continue. It's easy to forget, down here, that there's a city above, that normal people are dining, reading newspapers, or arguing over gaslight etiquette while you crouch next to something that might once have been a badger, now preserved in filth and poor decisions. Victorian society was obsessed with manners, morality, and keeping the dirty poor as far from view as possible. Well, mission accomplished. You're below ground, quite literally beneath notice. Some days, you think of quitting. Find a nice factory job, maybe bricklaying. Then you remember factory jobs pay worse. Bricklaying needs connections, and none of those come with the thrilling bonus of possibly discovering a sovereign coin next to a decomposed boot. You lift your lantern and keep going, because that's what Toshers do. They go where no one else dares. They suffer so others can flush without thinking. And in their own strange, smelly, shadowed way, they built part of the London the rest of the world romanticizes. They just didn't get statues for it. You keep moving, one soggy step at a time, deeper into the murky gut of the city. The tunnel narrows again, this time forcing you to crouch. The ceiling is a mess of soot, condensation, and something vaguely yellow you don't care to identify. You try not to bump your head, though by now, your cap is permanently crusted with memories of prior collisions. One Tosher called it the helmet of heartbreak. You nod in solidarity, even though he was probably joking. Probably. The smell is worse here, thicker, like burnt onions, spoiled milk, and Victorian regret all married and decided to start a family. You breathe through your mouth, which helps, until it doesn't. You gag once and move on. A trickle of something warm drips from the arch above. You flinch. Some tunnels have a mind of their own, weeping their contents at the worst possible moments. The droplets tap your shoulder with all the affection of an elderly dog with a bladder issue. You grimace. Somewhere above, someone's flushing, or maybe bathing, or maybe dumping leftovers from a dinner party with too many oysters and not enough common sense. You've learned to tell the difference, sadly. You pause at a curve. The tunnel forks. Left leads to the older brickwork, the Roman bits if you believe the local tales, while right veers toward newer construction, part of Bazalgette's great redesign. The left smells of mildew and ancient sorrow. The right smells like progress and slightly better drainage. You choose left because you're a Tosher. You're not here for comfort. You're here for the things comfort forgot. The water deepens to your shins. Each step squelches like the world's saddest accordion. The lantern flickers, either from breeze or something else. Historians still argue whether these underground air shifts were just pressure changes or signs of larger, unknown chambers waiting to collapse. You don't have time to debate. You just grip your rake tighter. There's a sound, not rats, not water, something metallic. A clink. You freeze. Then it comes again. Clink, clink. Soft, rhythmic. Someone else is here. You step forward slowly, peeking around a bend. There, hunched in the gloom, is another Tosher. His back is to you. He's muttering. Something about spoons. You clear your throat. He doesn't turn. You try again, louder. Evening. He startles, turns, and squints through the haze. His beard is soaked, boots black with gunk. He blinks, then grins. Thought you were a ghost, he says, in a voice that sounds like it's never seen a lemon. You nod. Could be. He laughs. If ghosts smell like sewer stew, then I've been haunted my whole life. You chuckle politely. Then ask the real question. Found anything? He shrugs and lifts a small tin box. Inside, 4 coins, a bent thimble, and what looks like the key to a very unfortunate door. Same as always. Trash, with a side of maybe. You trade stories briefly. He mentions a Tosher last week who slipped near Clerkenwell and landed face first in a flow pipe. They say he coughed up buttons for days. You believe it. Then, a joint silence. Not awkward, just respectful. Down here, words are precious. You nod farewell, step past, and he disappears into the mist behind you. You're alone again. The air grows thicker. The tunnel widens slightly, and you find a dry patch. Dry being entirely relative. You pause to rest. Your legs ache, your back's wet, and your left boot is doing that thing where it sounds like a duck every third step. You lean your rake against the wall, kneel down, and start poking through debris with gloved fingers. Something hard, round. You pull it up. A coin, copper, faint face, worn almost flat, but still. Money. You hold it to the lantern. A halfpenny. George the Fourth, maybe. Hard to say. Worth a crust of bread. Or a pint, if you know the right barkeep and don't mind the dregs. You pocket it. It's something. The truth is, you never know what you'll find. A Tosher once discovered a whole silver candlestick. Another pulled up a wedding ring, still on the finger. There are rumors of buried loot. Ancient coins flushed accidentally or dumped in panic. Historians still debate the tales of sewer pirates and treasure stashes. Were they real? Were they desperation dreams? Does it matter? You keep going because maybe the next glint is the one that gets you a coat, a night indoors, a meal without mystery meat. Hope, oddly enough, thrives in the muck. Above you, the city marches on. Below, you rake through the forgotten. And in the strange, wet silence of the tunnel, you start humming again. Because that's the thing about Toshers. They don't whistle to stay brave. They hum because silence is worse. The silence doesn't last. You hear it before you feel it. An odd, low gurgling somewhere in the tunnel ahead. Not the usual kind. This one has attitude. The kind of burble that means something's coming. You brace yourself, rake in hand, lantern lifted, like a weary knight with the world's most reluctant sword. A moment later it arrives. A surge of sewage-laced water, sweeping past your boots like a brown, frothy warning. You step to the side, careful not to lose footing on the moss-slick bricks. That's the thing about being a Tosher. Every step is a gamble. You either stay upright or become part of the soup. And the soup doesn't offer refunds. Once the rush passes, you glance at the tunnel ceiling. There's a slight upward draft now, carrying with it the telltale tang of methane and bad decisions. Another reminder that your job is not just unpleasant, it's combustible. You move slower, more deliberately. The air here has the unfortunate quality of being both thick and somehow still flammable. Open flame? Check. Flammable gas? Check. Perfect storm? Always. You may be wondering why exactly you're carrying a candle in a tin reflector on your head like some deranged birthday cake. Well, that's your Tosh light. It leaves your hands free while giving you just enough light to see what you're stepping in, and occasionally to accidentally set your eyebrows on fire. Historians still argue whether the Toshlight was a stroke of genius or a death wish with a wick. You're leaning toward the latter. You keep moving, and then you see it, a glimmer. You crouch quickly, rake ready. There, nestled in a pile of old rags and what might once have been a sock, is metal, round, reflective. You pluck it out carefully, wiping away grime with a practiced swipe. A coin, silver, faint crown on one side. It's been down here a while, possibly dropped by a drunk, or tossed by someone escaping the law. Either way, it's yours now. A small triumph in a job where victories are mostly coin sized and hygiene optional. You pocket it with satisfaction. Just then, behind you comes a squelch, then another. You whirl around. A figure emerges from the gloom. Tall, ragged coat, no lantern. You raise your rake. Easy, the figure mutters. Just me. It's another Tosher. New one. You don't recognize him. But then again, down here, names don't matter as much as whether someone's going to push you into the current or not. He nods toward the pocket where your new coin just vanished. Nice find, he says. Mind if I join? You hesitate. Two Toshers in one tunnel usually means trouble unless you're part of the same gang. And you're not. But you also know the rule. Never pick a fight you can't finish. Especially not knee-deep in muck, with one free hand and a pocket full of maybe luck. Suit yourself, you mutter, stepping aside. He passes with a squish and starts raking the opposite wall. You both work in silence, the occasional splash and grunt the only sound between you. Oddly companionable, in a sewer sibling sort of way. A few minutes pass, then he clears his throat. Hear about old Briny? You shake your head. What now? Fell through a maintenance hatch, straight down 20 feet, broke his leg, crawled back to the surface with one boot and half a sandwich. You nod. Survived? Nope. Got trampled by a costermonger's donkey outside the pub. You wince. Figures, Tosher tales, equal parts tragedy and comedy. Nobody ever just retires. They vanish, collapse, explode, or go mad and start talking to the eels. And there are eels. Fat, pale ones that writhe through the water like overcooked spaghetti with teeth. You've kicked a few by accident. They kick back. But at least they're honest about it. Up ahead, the tunnel opens into a junction, a larger chamber where several flows meet. This is prime territory. More flow means more things washed loose. It also means more danger. Collapsing walls, gas buildup, rogue currents, and worse, competition. You both approach slowly, eyes scanning the chamber's edges. It's filled ankle deep with swirling gray water. Bits of wood, fabric, even a child's doll float by like tiny shipwrecks from someone else's Tuesday. You see it first, a glint caught on the lip of an old pipe. You reach out with your rake, nudge it gently free. It drops into the water with a soft plink, and you fish it out. A pocket watch, brass, tarnished, but mostly intact. You flip it open, still ticks. You both stare. Well, the stranger says softly, that's a day's wages right there. You nod, but your heart's already pounding. Because here's the thing about finding something good in the sewers. It never feels like luck. It feels like the tunnel giving you a crumb. Just enough to keep you coming back. Because Toshers don't work for riches. They work for maybe, for crumbs, for the hope that today's filth hides tomorrow's fortune. You pocket the watch and smile faintly. You've earned your supper tonight, maybe even supper and socks. You tuck the ticking watch deep into your coat and glance once more at the Tosher beside you. He gives a grunt, neither friendly nor unfriendly, and begins poking through a pile of debris that looks suspiciously like it once tried to be a mattress. You leave him to it. In the sewer, etiquette is simple. Finders, keepers, losers, well, they often end up as part of the scenery. The chamber grows darker as your candle flickers against the increasing damp. You adjust your Tosh light, tilting it just enough to avoid catching your eyelashes on fire again. Then, with a deep breath that you immediately regret, you head into one of the side tunnels. Narrow, claustrophobic, the kind of space that makes your ribs itch. It's getting late. Not that you can tell by any natural means. There's no sky down here, just the rhythm of your legs, the growing ache in your shoulders, and the staleness in your lungs that says you've been breathing other people's leftovers too long. This is when things start to change, because at night, London doesn't just sleep, it exhales. You feel it first in the walls, a tremor, then distant echoes, the muffled thumps of drains belching their contents into the belly of the city. Dishwater, chamber pots, soup bones, regrets. They all make their way here eventually. The sewer grows louder, gurgles deepen into growls, and soon you find yourself sloshing through water that is very suddenly ankle to shin in depth, warm and frothy like the worst bubble bath ever imagined. You stop. The fog is rolling in now. Yes, sewer fog. Thicker than breath, heavier than guilt. It slinks along the ground like it's trying to claim your boots. You shine your light into it, but the beam gets swallowed like a biscuit in a boarding house. You know this smell? Sulfur, rot, that odd note of sweetness that means something died nearby, but hasn't decided whether to admit it. This is the part of the job nobody mentions in cheerful tavern tales. The part where the sewer becomes something different. Less system, more beast. And you are very much inside it. A hiss. You spin. Nothing. Or something. You inch forward. One hand on the wall. Rake in the other. The fog curling around your knees like it's trying to read your thoughts. Then, out of nowhere, thump. Not behind, below. You freeze. One foot finds something soft. It gives ever so slightly. You recoil. You bend down, holding your breath, which is a good idea anyway, and lift something pale from the muck. It's a wig. A powdered, curled, absolutely out of fashion wig. Possibly Georgian. Possibly cursed. You blink. Okay, you mutter. That's new. You sling it on a hook on your belt. Some eccentric collector will pay for that, you reckon, or someone will burn it. Either way, it's a story. But the noise remains. That thump. Intermittent. Like something moving deeper in the tunnel. Maybe another Tosher. Maybe something else. You keep going because stopping means thinking. And thinking down here never ends well. Ahead, the tunnel splits again. And this time, you choose right. This section is newer, part of the recent upgrades to London's labyrinth of filth. Joseph Bazalgette, bless him, had a thing for bricks. Over 300 million of them laid by hand, shaping a system so complex that even rats occasionally stop to admire it. Historians still debate whether the redesign truly eliminated the worst of London's sewer woes, or just buried them under prettier engineering. Either way, it's your office now. And in this office, something's glinting. You step closer. A pipe juts from the wall, crusted with limescale and the kind of slime that has a personality. Inside the pipe mouth, wedged just so, is a small metal object. You reach in slowly, fingers curling around cold brass. A signet ring. You whistle low, still intact, still bearing a crest, probably dropped by someone very important, very distracted, or very drunk. Maybe all three. You study the engraving. Two lions and a duck, possibly. The duck throws you off. You file it under rich people stuff and move on. You tuck the ring into a pouch on your belt that now holds a coin, a pocket watch, one small bone you haven't identified, and a Georgian wig. You're a walking pawn shop, curated by a fever dream. You feel almost pleased. Then something squeals. Not a rat. Rats don't squeal like that. This is higher, sharper. You freeze. Nothing follows. You wait. Still nothing. And so, as you've learned to do, you file it under weird sewer things, give it a shrug, and keep going. Because Toshers don't investigate. They endure. Besides, you've got work to do, muck to sift, and treasures to unearth. Even if the sewer is starting to feel alive, you're not sure when it happens, but the sound changes. The usual glug glug of flowing filth is still there, sure, but now it's quieter. Not silent exactly, just muffled, like the tunnel's been wrapped in a damp woolen blanket of ominous intention. Your boots slap against the wet stone with too much clarity. Each splash sounds like a mistake. That's usually the sign you're entering prime treasure territory. You pause at the junction where several feeder pipes converge, swirling their contents into a lazy whirlpool. Bits of cloth drift in lazy circles. A wooden spoon, something with a face that isn't alive anymore. You don't look too closely, because you're here for one thing: treasure. Well, treasure adjacent. You'd settle for anything that doesn't scream or squirm when picked up. You step carefully into the swirl and start raking. One slow sweep. Two. You feel something hard scrape the metal. You pull up a rusted chain. Not fancy, but intact. Could be worth a few pence to a scrap man with lenient standards. You loop it over your arm and keep going. The water's deeper here, sloshing halfway up your calves. It's warm, suspiciously so, like someone upstream just dumped out an entire bath, or something less wholesome. The surface ripples like it's breathing. You lean against the curved wall and let yourself breathe. This weird, wet, whispering world is your livelihood. It's strange to think that above you, in the streets of London, people are having tea, wearing waistcoats, debating the merits of poetry. Meanwhile, you're elbow deep in what they flushed away. They don't think about you. You are a phantom to them, an odor, a footnote. Historians still argue whether Victorian society ever truly acknowledged the Tosher's role in keeping the city running, or whether they preferred to simply wrinkle their noses and turn the other way. The truth is, your job is disgusting, but also necessary. Without you and the other poor souls down here, with rakes and hope, the city would clog up like a bad lung. Suddenly, plink, you look down. There, against your boot, something small and shiny bobs in the water. You lunge. It slips through your fingers, dances away, then comes to rest against a broken tile. You fish it out. A brooch, enamel and brass, a bit chipped, shaped like a violet. Someone probably loved it once. Maybe lost it on a bridge. Maybe threw it away after a heartbreak into the Thames, not realizing the tide would carry it to you, the Tosher, now squinting at it under gaslight in a tunnel that smells like old meat and secrets. You tuck it into your pouch. It's a good haul tonight, which makes you uneasy, because the sewer gives, but it also takes. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. The Tosher who found a full purse of gold sovereigns and never made it home. The boy who discovered a pearl necklace only to be swept out to the Thames by a sudden surge. The one who saw a glint in the wall and pried at it for so long he didn't notice the gas building behind him. Gone. You shake the thoughts away. Superstition is the only thing more common down here than mold. Still, you pat your finds, just to make sure they're still there. They are. You press forward into another chamber, this one larger, more ornate, a relic of old construction, maybe even Georgian. Brickwork arches stretch overhead like the ribs of a great beast. Moss clings to the ceiling like green velvet. Your light bounces against damp walls, and for a moment, you feel like you're in a forgotten church for misfits and mildew. This is where the best treasures settle. The flow slows here. Things collect. You scan the edges. There's a pile. Cloth, rope, hair? Nope. You skip that one. Next to it, a box. Small, metal, latched. You wade over, every step sending ripples through history. The box is crusted in rust, but not locked. You open it. Inside, 4 pennies. A whistle. A bone die. A locket with a cracked mirror. It looks like someone's keepsake stash. Hidden? Forgotten? You imagine a young man tucking it away, in secret, thinking he'd come back. He didn't. You whisper a soft cheers and take the pennies. The rest you leave. Not because you're sentimental, because you've learned to listen to your gut, and your gut says that locket would follow you home in all the wrong ways. As you stand to go, something shifts beneath your feet. A soft clack. You crouch, brush aside the slime. Tiles, dozens of them, glazed, patterned. You're standing on what was once a floor, a proper one. A hallway, maybe. London's older than it admits. Beneath the sewers are older sewers. Roman, Saxon, Norman, all stacked like geological lasagna. You're walking on ghosts, basically. You rake gently, revealing more tile work, intricate, blue and white. You pause, just appreciating it. Then instinct. You reach into a crack between two tiles and feel metal, small, cold. You pull a ring, silver, set with a black stone, maybe jet, maybe onyx. Hard to tell. It gleams like midnight. You turn it over. No inscription, but it hums in your hand. Or maybe that's just the sewer again. You hold on to it anyway, because in this job, you learn one thing fast. The sewer always has more to give, if you're foolish enough to keep asking. You slip the black stone ring into your pouch and instantly feel like you've added a pebble to a mountain of responsibility. It's funny, most days, you're just looking for brass, bent spoons, a copper nail if you're lucky. But now your pocket clinks with silver, watches, tokens of forgotten lives. You're starting to feel like a museum that smells suspiciously like soup. Your boots squelch as you move forward into a narrower tunnel. This one slopes ever so slightly downward, which in sewer terms means don't trip unless you want to meet your ancestors prematurely. The walls here are close enough to touch both sides with outstretched arms, which, to be clear, you don't. Because even with gloves, you don't want to find out what's living on this brickwork. The smell intensifies, which you didn't think was possible. It's the sort of smell that makes your teeth ache. A blend of rotten cabbage, wet wool, and something your brain refuses to name for self-preservation. And then you hear it, a soft plopping sound. Again, plop. You stop. Plop. Closer. You angle your light, and there they are. Rats. Dozens. Some the size of teapots. Some the size of last week's regrets. Their eyes glint like beads of malice, and they stare at you with a kind of confidence you've only ever seen in pub landlords and toddlers holding scissors. They're lined up along a narrow ledge, watching your every move, not skittering away, just judging. You keep walking. They don't move. You wonder, not for the first time, if they know something you don't. Historians still argue whether Victorian sewer rats grew larger due to diet, or if that's just legend passed down by generations of slightly dramatic Toshers. You, personally, have seen one drag away a pigeon like it owed them money. You reach a bend and turn sharply. The rats don't follow. You feel relief and disappointment. Rats are terrible company, but silence is worse. You push on. Soon the water rises again, this time to your knees. It's sluggish here, thick with silt and things that used to be other things. You adjust your stance to avoid losing a boot. You've lost 3 this month already. None of them to water. As you wade, something brushes past your leg. You freeze. It brushes again. You look down. An eel, long, pale, slightly glowing. It slides away like a slippery insult. Eels are part of the job. They nest in outflows, hide in debris, and sometimes curl up inside boots left unattended. One Tosher claimed he trained an eel to follow him for scraps. Another said he saw one with a monocle. That one was probably drunk. Still, you can't deny the eeriness. They're too smooth, too calm, like they know they belong down here, and you don't. You pass under a low arch, stooping slightly. This part of the sewer is older, Roman perhaps, or just before someone cared about plumbing regulations. The walls here sweat constantly. Every few feet, a trickle joins the muck from cracks above, carrying with it little flecks of lime and the occasional confused insect. You stop to rest, leaning against a section of wall that's slightly drier than the rest, meaning it only drips once every 10 seconds. You rummage in your bag and pull out your lunch, half a meat pie wrapped in paper and a hunk of bread that could double as a weapon. You chew slowly, not because it's good, but because it keeps your jaw moving, and that keeps you awake. Because down here, the moment you let your guard down, the tunnel reminds you it's alive. A faint groan, a shift in air pressure, the distant, almost polite bloop of something entering the system that you sincerely hope is not a person. You sigh. It's a lonely job, but it's yours. You take another bite and stare into the dark. It stares back. You remember your first day? You were young, stupid, still hopeful. You asked an older Tosher what the worst part of the job was. He said, the smells fade, the filth you get used to, but the quiet, that gets loud. You didn't understand him then. You do now, because down here, in the belly of London, time doesn't tick. It drips, and the only clock is your own breath. You finish your meal and stand, groaning slightly. Your legs protest. Your back cracks like an old chair. You stretch, which is difficult in a tunnel barely taller than you, but you do it anyway, because small comforts are the only ones available. You trudge on. As you move, the tunnel widens once more, revealing a chamber you haven't seen before. This one's different. Arched ceilings, carved pillars. It looks designed, not just built, planned, a forgotten piece of the city's underground puzzle. And there, in the center, partially submerged in dark water, is something metal, a large chest. You blink. Is it real? You step closer. The air here feels colder, still, like even the sewer's holding its breath. You reach out with your rake and tap the chest. Solid. You swallow. Either this is your biggest find yet, or the beginning of a cautionary tale told in whispers. You glance at your light, still flickering, still loyal. You lean in closer, and for the first time in hours, you smile. You stare at the chest for a few long moments, letting the possibilities unfurl in your mind like a slow grin. Could be treasure. Could be tools. Could be, knowing your luck, a box of wet socks sealed shut since the Napoleonic Wars. Still, anything locked and hidden in a sewer is asking to be opened. That's the rule. You crouch beside it, boots squishing into muck that has the texture of yesterday's oatmeal and the scent of taxidermy gone wrong. The chest is iron banded wood, swollen slightly from years of moisture but still solid. You run your gloved fingers over the latch. Rusted, stiff, and probably holding on more out of spite than structure. You pull your pocket pry bar, technically a bent crowbar, realistically your best friend. With a creak and a sigh, the lid lifts. Inside, not gold, not jewels, but not socks either. It's papers, documents, dozens of them. Water damaged, curled at the corners, but still legible in places. Receipts, shipping manifests, one with a royal crest. You blink. Some of these look official, like get arrested just for touching official. You pull one out carefully. It crackles like an old leaf. A ledger dated 1824. Names, totals, payment, lines that end in disappeared. You stare. Well, that's a plot twist. You pull a few more sheets. One mentions a cargo embargo and something else about dockmaster incentives. You may not be a scholar, but this smells like corruption. The expensive kind. And here you are, a Tosher in a sewer, holding evidence of possibly the most boring scandal ever to take place beneath London. Historians still argue whether Toshers occasionally stumbled across criminal secrets, or if those tales were just inventions meant to make their jobs sound less revolting. You're currently leaning toward accidental intelligence agent. You pocket a few of the driest sheets, not for blackmail. You're not that ambitious, but someone might pay for them, or at least buy you a pint for the story. The chest has one more compartment. You lift the false bottom, and there it is. A pistol, flintlock, rusty, elegant in that last thing you ever see sort of way. You don't touch it. Some things are better left exactly where you found them. Like ghosts and Victorian firearms, you step back, close the chest, and leave it. Someone else can have that adventure. You've already got a ring, a wig, a watch, and enough on a whispered danger to fill a novella. You move on. The tunnel narrows again, funneling you toward what's known among Toshers as the wet lung. Not an actual lung, obviously, but a section of the sewer where the walls sweat so profusely that it feels like you're breathing through a wet wool coat. You tighten your scarf, which smells like damp despair, and press forward. Here, the air is thick. Your candle sputters. You cough. Once, twice, then stop. Because coughing down here is like laughing at a funeral, unwise and contagious. You reach a spot where the water pools deeper and the floor dips. You know this stretch. It's a catchment area meant to slow flow during floods. But to Toshers, it's known as Pockets Pond because things fall here and they stay. You feel your way along the edge with your rake. Carefully, slowly. You catch something. You drag it up. A shoe. Old, child-sized. You stare. Still tied. You put it down. You don't take everything. You breathe out. Long. Steady. Then rake again. Something solid. Flat. With corners. You tug it up. A tin box. You smile. No lock, no drama. You open it. Inside, pins, a broken locket, 2 farthings, and a key. Just a key. Plain. Heavy. Probably for a cellar or a gate long gone. You keep the farthings. The rest? You reclose the box and tuck it into a dry nook in the wall. Someone else will find it. Maybe years from now, maybe never. But in a way, you've left a message in a bottle, a breadcrumb for the next soul with more curiosity than sense. You stretch your back again, vertebrae popping like knuckles, and keep moving. The tunnel starts to echo differently now. Less water, more stone. You're nearing the Tosher's grotto. That's what they call it. Half joke, half truth. It's a large chamber tucked beneath Old Bishopsgate, where several of the older tunnels meet and intersect. The water moves slowly here, and so do the Toshers. It's where you go to compare finds, swap rumors, or just rest in the foul air and pretend the world isn't literally flowing around your knees. You arrive, rounding the last bend, and there they are, three figures, lanterns dim, one eating something unidentifiable but steaming, another fiddling with a broken watch, the third staring into the water like it owes him rent. They nod as you enter. You nod back. No one speaks right away. There's something comforting about shared silence, the kind that only forms when everyone is equally tired, equally filthy, and equally ignored by the world above. You sit, rest, let the water swirl around your boots. You pull out your haul, the watch, the ring, the brooch. They nod approvingly. The man with the watch offers half a biscuit in tribute. You accept. And for a moment, just a moment, the sewer doesn't feel so lonely. You munch the half biscuit slowly, savoring the fact that it's only slightly damp and tastes vaguely of peppermint and despair. Around you, the grotto murmurs with the low, sloshing rhythm of the flows feeding in from half the city. Pipes gurgle, water drips. Somewhere overhead, a horse-drawn carriage clatters by. The echo is distant, but real. A reminder that life continues above while you sit in its leftovers. You pull your coat tighter. The air in the grotto is cooler. Not fresh. Nothing down here qualifies as fresh, but less aggressive. The fog that clung to your boots earlier has thinned to a greasy mist, curling along the stone floor like a cat that's seen too much. The others keep mostly to themselves. The fiddler with the broken watch, named Grice, mutters about springs and gears and how the Queen's time runs too slow anyway. The biscuit man, Henry, maybe, or Harold, leans back with his eyes closed, chewing like someone who's long since made peace with the idea of a soggy dinner. You watch them, and for a while, it feels like a community, a very damp, slightly pungent community. Then it's time to move again, because a Tosher doesn't sit too long. Not here, not ever. The water shifts, the air changes. And that sense, the one you develop after weeks or years down here, tells you it's time to go. You nod, stand, and pick your way along the northern tunnel, deeper into a part of the system that's less known. You've memorized the layout in your bones, not from maps, from feel, from sound, from smell. Historians still argue whether Toshers passed down detailed maps of the sewers, or if the knowledge was purely oral, taught by fathers, uncles, grumpy neighbors, or the occasional boot to the backside. You've never seen a map, but you've seen the walls, and they talk if you know how to listen. Take the marks, for instance. You pass one now, scratched into the brick in soot-black chalk. It looks like a child's scribble, but to you, it means don't go left after rain. A Tosher mark. A warning left by someone who probably didn't heed it themselves. There are others. Crosses. Dots. Little arrows. Each telling a story in 5 strokes or less. Found coin here. Eel nest. Caved wall. Or the dreaded one. Soft ground. Don't trust it. You obey the signs. You always do, even when the temptation calls from darker tunnels. Because treasure is one thing, but survival is your real job. You duck under a low arch, wincing as your back reminds you it's not 23 anymore. The tunnel here is tighter, older. The air smells metallic, like rust and dried blood, and a hint of regret. You find yourself humming again, a low, tuneless hum just to fill the space. And then your foot bumps something. You look down, a manhole cover, but not a standard one. This one's smaller, set into the tunnel floor, half hidden beneath silt. You crouch, scrape it clean. It's marked with an emblem, two crossed keys, and the word vault. You frown. You've never seen that before. You glance around. No other markings, no chalk signs, no warnings, which oddly makes it more suspicious. You try lifting the cover. It moves, heavy, but not locked. A dry grind of metal on stone. Beneath, a dark shaft leading downward. You hesitate, then sigh. Of course you're going in. You lower yourself carefully, boots finding the rungs of an old iron ladder. The shaft smells old. Not sewage exactly. Dusty, stale, like a forgotten attic in the world's worst house. You descend 10 feet, 15, and then your boots touch solid ground. You lift your lantern. The chamber is small, square, the walls stone, dry, and old enough to have seen a plague or two. It's silent. You take a step. The floor crunches. You look down. Bones. Small ones. Animal probably. Probably. You walk carefully to the far wall where something glints. A shelf. On it, a row of bottles. Some broken. Some sealed with wax so old it flakes like dandruff. And next to them, a book. You reach out and gently lift it. The cover crumbles, but the pages inside hold. It's a journal. You flip it open. Scrawled handwriting. Neat but rushed. You read a line. February 3rd. The tunnel shook again. I fear they built too much too quickly. We cannot keep patching leaks with prayer. You pause. This is no Tosher's journal. This was someone higher up. An engineer. Maybe a clerk. Someone who knew the city was sinking long before the public did. Another line. There is something in the wall. It breathes. You close the book. Nope. You replace it on the shelf. You may be curious, but you're not stupid. This is one of those finds you leave behind, like cursed rings, or haunted wigs, or unopened letters addressed to the bearer of regret. You climb back up the shaft, sealing the manhole behind you. You don't mark it. You don't want to remember where it is. Sometimes the sewer gives you something valuable. Other times it gives you a warning. You've learned the difference. Back in the tunnel, the air feels a little fresher, or maybe you're just glad to be back among the predictable horrors of rats, rust, and ankle-high mystery juice. You hum again, louder this time. The bricks hum back, and onward you go. You leave the manhole behind like a bad dream, one of those half-remembered ones with candlelight, Latin inscriptions, and a goat that definitely knew your name. Your boots slap louder now, like they're trying to talk you out of returning tomorrow. But you will. Of course you will. Because this is what you do. You Tosher. And toshing, let's be clear, is technically illegal. You knew that going in. Everyone does. The sewers are the city's property, just like the lampposts, and the guards who scowl at you for no reason. So what you're doing, waiting around, reclaiming things that fell into the stream of civic indifference, is, well, frowned upon. If you're caught, there's a fine, or a night in the clink, or in one spectacular case, A lecture from a magistrate so long it nearly qualified as a sleep aid. You pass under a narrow arch, scraping your shoulder on wet brick, and smile to yourself. They call it theft. You call it municipal recycling. Still, you stay sharp. Because while some constables just shake their heads and walk away, others feel like proving a point. And if that point happens to be, no, you can't actually live in the Queen's underpants drawer, then you're in for a long night. Just last week, old Jim got nabbed near Covent Garden, was just pulling a brass candlestick from a storm drain when two bobbies strolled by. They arrested him on the spot for tampering with city plumbing, whatever that means. Historians still debate whether Victorian authorities truly cared about sewer intrusion or simply used it as an excuse to tidy up the poor. You round another corner, finding a side chamber. Low ceiling, trickle of water from above, good place to rest, and to hide if need be. You crouch beside the wall, listening. Nothing. Well, not nothing. Just the usual chorus of sewer ambience. Drip, slosh, tiny squeak, mysterious splash, but no footsteps, no voices. You exhale. Then, from your pouch, you pull a badge. It's a little brass disc, stamped with a serial number, faded but legible. You found it in the mud weeks ago. Likely belonged to a sewer inspector, a flush man, they're called. Real city employees with lanterns, clipboards, and pensions. People who belong down here. You don't. Not officially. But you keep the badge anyway. Because if a constable ever corners you, waving it around might buy you a moment of hesitation. And in the sewer, a moment is all you need. You tuck it back into your coat, then pause. Because the chamber just got colder. The hair on your neck rises like a row of suspicious tenants. You lift your lantern. The water isn't moving. It's never that still. You rise slowly, one hand on your rake, the other clutching the lantern tighter than your last shilling. You step forward, peering into the gloom. Then, movement, a shadow, human-sized. It slips across the far wall and vanishes. You freeze. Was that another Tosher? A constable? A ghost? You've heard the stories, everyone has, of men who vanished in the sewers, of screams echoing through pipes, of eyes in the dark. Most are nonsense. Probably. But after what you saw in that stone room, you back out of the chamber, carefully, quietly, because illegal or not, you don't want to meet anyone down here who moves without footsteps. Back in the main tunnel, you breathe easier. Oddly, the sewage smell is comforting now. Familiar. Friendly even. You press on, letting your rake drag beside you. You spot a glint, just a faint one, and kneel. A spoon, tarnished but silver. Fancy handle, monogrammed. Another minor victory. You pocket it. And then, from a nearby pipe, a cough. Not yours. You spin. A figure steps out, tall, thin, wearing a coat older than your father's regrets. Evening, the man says, voice low and dry. You nod. Evening. He looks you over, sees the rake, the pouch, the lantern. You from Camden gang? You shake your head. Solo. He nods. Safer sometimes. Lonelier, you say. He chuckles. And stinkier. You both laugh. Quietly. The sewer doesn't like noise. He steps closer, raises a hand. Not threatening. Just curious. You seen the inspector lately? He asks. Your brow furrows. What inspector? He shrugs. Bloke in a red coat. Keeps poking around. Places he shouldn't. Asking questions. Carrying a book. You frown. Redcoat. Book? You think of the chamber. The journal. You shake your head. Nope. He says, unconvinced. Then, he nods once more. Well, mind the gases. They're building up tonight. And just like that, he turns and vanishes into the tunnel behind you. No sound, no splash, gone. You stand there for a full minute, the silence pressing in like an old mattress. Then you move on, because that's what you do, legal or not, safe or not, wanted or not. You walk the tunnels, you find what others lose, and you try not to become one of the lost yourself. You press on through the narrowing tunnel, rake in one hand, lantern in the other, ears open for anything that sounds too deliberate. The man in the coat, if he was real, disappeared like steam, and in the sewer, things that disappear quietly tend to stay disappeared. Still, it's not paranoia if the brickwork's hissing. The tunnel walls here weep moisture that smells off, more chemical than organic. Your nostrils sting slightly. You know this scent, gas. Not the harmless waft of something fermented over time, but the gas. The one that makes your candle flicker strangely and your lungs itch like you swallowed a match. You pause, lower the lantern to the flow. The water bubbles. Not the usual kind either. Not your run of the mill sewage gurgle. This is a slow bloop, followed by a rising glunk, and then a pause, like the sewer itself is holding in a burp. You step back. A good Tosher knows the 3 rules of gas safety. If your candle flickers blue, leave. If you smell rotten eggs, but haven't eaten any, leave faster. If someone says it's probably fine, never speak to them again. You hold your breath and inch your way along the side wall, moving toward a side pipe you know leads to an older section, fewer hazards, more spiders. But at least spiders don't explode. Historians still debate whether Victorian sewers were truly prone to spontaneous combustion or if the stories were exaggerated by soot-covered survivors who needed an excuse for their missing eyebrows. But the truth? It happened. Not often, but often enough that the phrase gassed like a Tosher was known at the local taverns. You've seen it once yourself. Back in '54, a lad named Petey brought a new lantern, a beauty from a shipyard, all polished brass and sharp corners. He was 2 tunnels deep when it caught a pocket of methane and lit up like Christmas in hell. They found his rake, nothing else. You reach the side tunnel and crawl through the tight arch, letting your candle recover in the calmer air. The scent changes, still unpleasant, but less flammable. You exhale and sit for a moment on a dryish ledge. There's a story some tell down here, especially after one too many pints, about the king of gas, a shadow that lives in the oldest parts of the sewer, feeding on fumes and whispers. It appears before big blows, always watching, always grinning. You don't believe it. Much. Still, you mutter, "No offense, Your Majesty," just in case. Back on your feet, you edge deeper into the side tunnel where the walls grow narrow and the stones feel older. This part of the network predates Bazalgette's great rebuild. The brick here is uneven, patched with random stone, and suspiciously warm in some places. You pass a niche in the wall where a pipe ends abruptly. A puddle glows faintly green beneath it. You choose not to ask why. Then, a clink. Not from your pouch. You stop. Listen. Another clink. Metal on stone. You raise your lantern and see a kettle, just sitting there, next to the wall, like someone popped down to make tea and forgot the part where they brought the rest of the kitchen. You approach it slowly, rake ready. It's old, dented, but still shiny under the grime. You tap it with your foot. It doesn't explode. Progress. You reach down and lift the lid. Inside, a handful of coins, mostly farthings, a few halfpennies, and a tooth. You close the lid. Leave it where it is, because there are only 2 explanations. A Tosher left it as a stash and will be back for it soon. A sewer goblin is luring you into a terrible trade agreement. You don't like either option. Moving on, you notice something scrawled on the wall. Not chalk, scratched. Don't breathe too deep. It listens. You tilt your head. Now, that's new. You step around the corner and nearly gag. The stench hits like a wet slap. Not sewer, not even gas. Something sharper. Tangy. Acrid. You cover your mouth, and then you see the source. A pile of fabric. No, clothing. Tossed haphazardly in a corner. A jacket. A pair of trousers. A boot with a foot still in it. You step back. No body. Just remnants. You shine your light closer. The boot's old. Black leather. The kind a city official might wear. You lean in. Inside the pocket of the jacket. A small notebook. You pull it out. Careful not to disturb anything else. The cover reads, Dat of Sanitation. Gas. Survey 1861. You open it. Pages soaked. Ink run. But one phrase stands out, written in large, frantic strokes. Found chamber. Air wrong. Saw light with no source. You close it. Nope. You've had enough of mystery lights and journals that sound like bad omens. You tuck it in your coat, not because you want to keep it, but because it feels wrong to leave behind, like it might follow you. You quicken your pace, back into the main tunnels, where the stench returns to its baseline. Warm, earthy, slightly peppery, with a hint of despair. You breathe. The air's better here, safer, familiar. You're back in the world of rats and mud, and coins that smell like soup. You've escaped the gas. This time, and you still have your eyebrows. Bonus. You emerge from the side tunnel like a man reborn, damp, mildly traumatized, and clinging to a mysterious notebook you didn't really ask for. But that's sewer life. You go in looking for a shilling and come out with a foot, a warning, or an existential crisis. Sometimes all three. The main passage greets you with the usual chorus of drips and squelches. It's strangely reassuring. You know these sounds. You've named a few of them. That persistent plink on the left? That's Gregory. Always drips at 4-second intervals. You're not saying you're lonely. You're just heavily acquainted with your environment. As you slosh forward, you notice your legs are getting heavier. Not metaphorically, literally. The water's rising. That means the tide is coming in. London's sewers are fickle things, tied not just to rainfall, but to the moon, the Thames, and whether or not someone upstream dumped their wash basin. You glance at the wall where a grimy line marks the last high tide. You're a few inches below it now. You pick up your pace, not because you're scared, because you're experienced. There's a difference. Your route shifts. You veer into a smaller tunnel, lower ceiling, faster flow. It's a known path, reliable if mildly ankle-threatening. You step carefully, rake still ready, because treasure hides in these narrows. Shiny buttons, cufflinks, sometimes even a coin, lodged between bricks like the sewer decided to tip you for service. You pause. There, something metallic. You bend and fish it out. A ring. Second today, this one's gold. Real. You bite it because that's what people do, even though you once chipped a molar doing it. It's soft enough to be worth something. Inscribed to M, with all my heart. J. 1847. You turn it in your hand. Someone loved someone once, and now their symbol of affection is being admired by a man who hasn't had a romantic thought since he last washed his socks. You add it to the pouch. You keep going. Up ahead, you spot another Tosher. Short, broad, limping slightly. You recognize him. Tully. Been around for years. Smells like turnips and pipe smoke. Afternoon, you mutter. He grunts. Flood comin', he says, voice gravelly. I know. He squints at your pouch. Good haul? You shrug. Decent. He snorts. Means bad luck's comin'. Classic Tully. Always the optimist. You nod, say nothing, and move on. But his words sit in your pocket, heavier than the coins. Historians still debate whether Toshers believed in sewer omens or just needed something to blame when things went sideways. But every Tosher has that moment, the one where everything's too quiet, too easy, and the tunnel seems to lean in close, as if whispering, you forgot to knock on wood. You round another bend, one you know well, except this time, it's different. There's a cart here, not a wagon. A hand cart, wooden, two wheels, abandoned. Sitting in a pocket of dry stone like someone wheeled it in, decided nope, and fled. You approach slowly. The cart's full of junk. Broken pottery, nails, a doll's head, a bent ladle, but underneath, books. At least 6, bound in cracked leather, swollen with moisture, but intact. You crouch. Open one carefully. It's handwritten. A journal. You glance around. No one. You flip to a random page. June 12th. The rats follow me. I think they listen when I speak. All good. You found the madman's library. You open another. They say the water remembers. I tried to forget, but it didn't let me. You close the book. Nope. Today is not a cursed literature kind of day. You take one book because part of you, deep down, always wants answers. The rest you leave. As you step back, your foot lands on something firm. You look down. A skull. Small. Human. Not fresh. You inhale through your teeth and gently step away. The sewer doesn't like to be disrespected. You move on. Your lantern flickers. You shield it, whispering to it like an old friend. Not yet, pal. We've still got miles to go. The tunnel veers again, rising slightly. You follow it up, boots squelching, with more effort now. Your pouch swings at your side, heavy with the day's finds and the subtle weight of not knowing what's watching you. Then a sound. Above you. A clang, metallic. Manhole. Someone opening it. You duck into the shadows. Instinct overriding logic. Voices. 2 of them. Might be one of those scavengers. One says. Better not. Not after what they found last week. The lid slams shut. You exhale slowly. You wait another full minute before emerging, checking the ceiling like it might drop a constable on your head. You're not scared, but you are careful. You reach a wider tunnel. You know this one. Leads out near a brewery. The air here always smells faintly of hops and moldy bread, which frankly is a lovely change of pace. You let yourself relax just a bit because you're nearing the end of the shift. Your sack is full, your feet ache. You've only been mildly cursed, and most importantly, you're still breathing. You adjust your coat, glance at the sky through a grating above, and keep walking. The tunnel curves again as always. The city above moves on, unaware. And down below, you continue your quiet, filthy patrol. The last Tosher of the day. Your boots grow heavier with each step, soles caked in the kind of muck that dreams of becoming fossilized. You don't bother scraping it off anymore. Sewer boots are like trust issues. Once they're layered in, they just become part of the foundation. This section of the tunnel is familiar, almost comforting. The walls are wider here, the brick laid in neat Victorian curves that almost look artistic, if you squint past the slime and occasional rat graffiti. You run your hand lightly along the wall as you pass, feeling the subtle bumps and cracks you've memorized. It's your version of street signs. Up ahead, the tunnel splits. Left goes toward the outflows. Right winds back beneath Spitalfield's market. You hesitate. Outflows mean fresher air, but fewer finds. Spitalfields? That's where the weird stuff turns up. You sigh and turn right. Of course you do. You don't come down here for the scenery. The flow narrows again, speeding slightly around your ankles, carrying who knows what from the upper wards. You try not to think about it. It's just river tea, thick, unsettling, served lukewarm. The tunnel bends, then dips, and you duck instinctively as the ceiling drops just low enough to test your scalp for bumps. And then, there, on the wall, you see it. A mark, fresh, chalk. Two lines crossed, one curved arrow beneath. You pause. That's the symbol for drop site, a place where someone, usually another Tosher, stashed goods for pickup. Sometimes it's a trade, sometimes a tribute, sometimes something darker. Historians still argue whether Victorian Toshers operated in organized networks with codes and signals, or if the chalk signs were more folklore than fact. But you followed enough of them to know these marks matter. You scan the wall. Ah, there, a brick. Slightly darker than the rest, slightly loose. You press it. It gives way. Behind it, a hollow. Inside, a cloth bundle. You slide it out, unwrap it slowly. It's a pair of spectacles, wire-rimmed, gold, and weirdly pristine, as if someone cleaned them before hiding them here. You frown. A note is tucked inside the frame. Scrawled in tight spidery script, he sees through lies now. Keep them hidden. You blink, then chuckle, a soft, tired chuckle. Because sure, why not? It's just another day in the life of someone who gets their mail from a sewage wall. You tuck the spectacles into your pouch. Not because you believe in haunted eyewear, but because gold is gold. And if they do see through lies, well, you'll just avoid looking in mirrors. You move on. The tunnel narrows again, turning tight, until suddenly it opens into a pocket chamber. Circular, domed, with water pooled in the center. You know this place. Tosher's Rest, they call it. Not because you rest here, because the acoustics are perfect for listening. Every drop from every side tunnel echoes just slightly differently. If you know what to listen for, you can hear whether someone's approaching, whether something else is approaching. You crouch and wait. One drop, high pitch. That's from the west pipe. Another, flat, dull, north. Nothing from the east. Good. You lean against the wall, just for a moment, and close your eyes. Not sleep, never sleep. Just letting the weight settle. You think back to the first time you entered these tunnels. Younger, cockier, cleaner. You remember the man who brought you down. Old Cratchit, a legend in rubber boots. Had a laugh like a barrel falling down, stairs and a nose that bent twice. He taught you 3 rules. Don't trust dry bricks. Don't step where it's still bubbling. Don't go chasing echoes. You followed the first 2 faithfully. The third, well, you open your eyes. Something's dripping behind you, but not from above. It's coming from the wall. You tilt your lantern. A crack has formed in the bricks. Thin, just wide enough to let through a dribble of water. And something else. A faint light. You step closer. Peer inside. You see nothing. Just more tunnel. Except it isn't on your map. Not in your memory. Not in your bones. You glance at the floor. Fresh footprints. Boots, not yours. Headed inside. You hesitate. Your instincts do a little dance between nope and curious. Then you hear it. A whisper. Faint. Almost like wind. But there's no wind down here. You mutter to yourself rule number 3 and take one more step forward anyway. The crack widens just enough to let you squeeze through sideways, scraping your coat, nearly dropping your lantern. Inside, a hidden passage, brickwork, older than the rest. Roman maybe, or older, hard to tell. The air is stale, but not foul. You move forward. The floor crunches beneath your boots. You pause. Reach down. Shells. Tiny ones. A fossil bed? You look up. And there, ahead of you, carved into the stone above an archway, are the words, "Here." Even the past forgets. You exhale slowly. This is new. This is very new. And now you're in it, whatever it is. You stand beneath the inscription, "Here." Even the past forgets, trying very hard not to imagine what, exactly, the past is supposed to be forgetting. Because down here, where the walls breathe and the air carries old secrets, like lint in a pocket, forgetting usually means something got buried, or worse, eaten. You raise your lantern. The tunnel beyond the arch is dry. Not just less damp, bone dry. The air hangs thick with dust and stillness, like a sealed attic or that one neighbor's living room no one's allowed to enter. You step in cautiously, boots echoing more than they should. It's not often you get echoes in the sewer. The sludge usually swallows, sound like a guilty dog swallows evidence. Here, though, every footstep bounces, like the walls are listening. You press forward. The brick turns to stone, smooth, carved, ancient. Someone built this long before flush toilets and angry constables, possibly before trousers. You trail your fingers along the grooves in the wall, symbols maybe, or just fancy drains. You pass alcoves, small ones, each holding something different. A pile of coins, blackened with age, a single shoe, child-sized, a tax ledger, open to a page with names scratched out violently. Each item tells a story, or tries to. Historians still debate whether secret societies operated beneath Victorian London, using the sewers as clandestine highways. Most dismiss it as romantic nonsense, but you're beginning to suspect someone down here had a flair for mystery, and possibly a flair for really poor record keeping. You reach a round chamber. At its center, a plinth. Atop it, a metal bowl. You approach, peering in. Water. Still, clear, which is already suspicious. Then you see it, your own reflection. But not quite. Your hair's wrong. Your coat is different. The figure in the water is you, but from another time, another path. He looks back, then turns and walks away. Inside the bowl, you jerk your head up. Nothing. Just the stone chamber. You step back quickly. Enough of that. You're a Tosher, not a protagonist in a gothic novella. Time to leave. You turn, only to find the tunnel behind you has shifted. You swear it was straight. Now it curves. You press your lips together, exhaling through your nose. Classic. You mark the wall with a bit of soot, your own symbol. 2 quick slashes and a curl. Then you move forward. Again. Eventually, the dry air gives way to damp again. A blessing somehow. The scent of mildew and old feet returns, like a favorite disappointing relative. You're back in known territory, sort of, because as you round a corner, you nearly walk face first into a door. Not a gate, not a grate, a door. Wood, heavy, iron-bound, with a knocker shaped like a fish eating its own tail. You stare at it. You knock, because what else are you going to do? The knock echoes longer than expected. Then, creaking, it opens. No one is there. Just a staircase? Up. Well, that's new. You ascend cautiously. Each step groans like it's filing a complaint. At the top, a room, candlelit, warm, books on every wall. And in the center, an old man, seated asleep or dead. You step closer. He's breathing. You cough politely. His eyes flutter open, cloudy, pale, but sharp underneath. Ah, he says, you're early. You blink. Early? For the forgetting. You open your mouth, close it again. He smiles faintly. You've seen the water, the inscription. You're in it now. In what exactly? He reaches into his coat, pulls out a small metal disc, a Tosher badge. Like yours. Welcome, he says, to the archive. The what now? Ah, the sewer remembers, he whispers, more than the city ever will. We've kept its memory. We walk its veins. You're a Tosher? He nods. Was. Now I'm a librarian of sorts. You glance at the books. Sewer history? Everything that matters, he says. The things that never made it above ground. The stories swept away. The truths buried in runoff and shame. You step back. This is too much, even for today. He sees your hesitation. You'll forget soon enough, he says gently. That's the deal. What deal? He smiles. And then, without fanfare, he closes his eyes and doesn't open them again. You stand in silence, surrounded by candlelight and mildew scented mysteries, unsure if you've been initiated or punked. You turn, go back down the stairs. The door closes behind you on its own. You don't look back. Some tunnels aren't for returning. You find your way back into the main sewer system like a diver surfacing from strange waters. Your breath comes easier. The lantern burns steady again, and your pouch is heavier than before, though you can't quite remember everything you picked up. The moment you're back in the familiar sewer, it's like waking from a dream you can't fully explain. Only your boots are still wet, your coat smells worse, and your pouch has mysteriously gained an extra clink or two. The tunnel narrows again, the scent returning to the classic cocktail of damp stone, iron rust, spoiled stew, and one haunting note of despair you've never been able to place. Probably turnips. Or policy. You know where you are now, beneath the tenements of Shoreditch. Above, someone is likely arguing about laundry or eating eel pie in tragic silence. But you're trudging under their lives, picking through what falls between the cracks. And right now, those cracks are kind enough to offer up a bent sixpence, a hat pin, and a tiny porcelain foot. Just the foot. No explanation. You add it to your collection, not because it's valuable, but because it's become a sort of superstition. You've got a box of oddities at home: baby doll limbs, rusted thimbles, a tooth engraved with the number 3. They're your sewer souvenirs. Your breadcrumb trail into madness. As you move, the ceiling rises and your head stops brushing brick. You're grateful. The city's underbelly has a habit of smacking you just when you feel comfortable, which is fair. You're not supposed to be comfortable down here. You reach one of the rare brick alcoves built into the wall. A dry spot. Maybe. You sit for a moment. This is your routine. Work the tunnels. Rest here, then climb back into the world that pretends the sewer doesn't exist. Except there's always one problem. You smell like the sewer. Victorian London isn't particularly fragrant to begin with, but when you walk into a pub after 12 hours down here, even the guy cleaning the chamber pots gags politely behind his pint. You try. You really do. You splash yourself with water that barely qualifies as wet. You rub your hands on vinegar-soaked rags. You once tried perfume. It backfired horribly. There's only so much you can do when the scent has seeped into your very soul. The worst part? People never say anything directly. They just react. Step back, wrinkle noses, offer seats near open windows. One lady fainted once. You hadn't even sat down. You used to explain, "I'm a Tosher," you'd say. "I work the sewers." Like that was a valid job, like chimney sweeps, or rat catchers, or men who shout about fish. But no one wants to think about where their lost jewelry ends up, or what happens when their toddler flushes a spoon. So now, you don't say much at all. You eat alone, drink alone, sleep next to your window. And when someone asks what you do, you shrug and say, "Odd jobs," which is technically true. You think about that as you sit in the alcove, letting your feet rest in the flowing mystery soup beneath you. You think about the lives above and how different yours is. Historians still debate whether Toshers were viewed as heroes of sanitation or just nuisances with a shovel and an attitude. But you know the truth. Most people don't think of you at all. You exist in the blind spot, invisible, until they need you, until a wedding ring vanishes down a grate, or a child drops their lucky coin and can't stop crying. Then you're useful. Then you're called for. You've climbed through filth for grieving widows. You've pulled lost heirlooms from under a butcher shop. You once retrieved a grandfather's pipe from beneath a church, still warm somehow, but no one ever says thank you. They just take the thing, nod awkwardly, and move on. You don't mind. Much. You get paid, usually, and at the end of the day, you go home with pockets jangling and fingers that still twitch in your sleep, mapping tunnels in your dreams. You shift your weight, stretch your back, and stand. Enough rest. You've still got another tunnel or two before the tide cuts off your route. You climb out of the alcove, back into the flow, and carry on. The tunnel darkens again as the wall lamps grow fewer and the bricks feel older. This is the part most Toshers skip. Too deep, too twisty, too forgotten. Which is why you go there. Because where others fear, treasure waits. You duck under a low arch, one you've memorized by feel. Left boot steps into a depression. Right boot avoids the loose brick. Head tilts just so to avoid a beam, with a nail that's ruined more hats than time itself. You make it through. On the other side, a ladder leads upward. You pause. This exit takes you out near a meat pie vendor who owes you 3 shillings and never makes eye contact. You consider knocking on the hatch and confronting him, then decide against it. The world above can wait. You've got one more tunnel in you, maybe two. The sewer hasn't finished with you yet. You turn from the ladder and head deeper. The air grows thick again, not with the heavy sweetness of rot, but a dry mineral bite. It clings to your throat like coal dust, or an unspoken secret. The kind of air that says, "You're not supposed to be here," in a whisper you pretend not to hear. Your lantern flickers slightly, not from gas this time, from tiredness, maybe. The candle's stubby now, wax curling, like it's trying to crawl back to safety. You light a spare. Even fire gets nervous in this part of the tunnel. The ground slants downward, and you begin to hear it. Drip, drip, drip. Not the usual haphazard trickle of a leaky pipe, but regular, mechanical, like the beat of an invisible metronome. You follow it, of course, because Toshers are curious by trade, reckless by necessity. The tunnel opens into a wider space, low-ceilinged, round like a water tank that forgot it had a purpose. Moss grows in thick, velvety patches. In the center, a sunken basin filled with brackish water, and floating in that basin, a boot, just one. You step closer. It's not just a boot, it's your boot. Same stitching, same hole near the toe. You blink, look down. Both your boots are still on. You blink again. One of them is gone. You're barefoot on the left. You stagger back. It doesn't make sense. You turn, slightly panicked now. The tunnel behind you is different, smaller, crooked, wrong. The sewer does that sometimes. Historians rarely write it down, but every Tosher knows the tunnels shift. Not physically, nothing so dramatic, but in the way that old neighborhoods do, where you swear the butcher used to be next to the greengrocer, not 3 shops down. And now, you're somewhere else. Still London, still underground, but different. You press forward. What else are you going to do? You reach a passage so narrow, you have to turn sideways. The wall is damp with condensation that smells faintly of soap and rusted copper. You touch it and feel something sticky. You pull back your hand. Ink, thick black ink, dripping from the wall. You stare. Then the wall ripples, just slightly, as if sighing. You don't wait for a second exhalation. You move fast. 2 turns later, you arrive at a wide, dry corridor, a marvel of Victorian engineering, arched and symmetrical, like a tunnel from a cathedral's drunk cousin. And here's the thing, someone lives here. You can tell. There's a crate with a candle on it, half burned, a blanket, a teacup turned upside down over a spoon, even a book, spine cracked, pages fanned open to a chapter titled Burials Without Ceremony. You call out softly. No answer. You step closer to the crate. There's something underneath the blanket. You hesitate. Then lift it. A pile of bones, arranged, not just tossed. Neat, thoughtful, almost reverent. You step back. The teacup falls and rolls. You freeze. A footstep echoes. Not yours. You spin toward the sound. Nothing, but you smell something. Faint cologne, leather, maybe the ghost of cloves. Whoever was here isn't anymore, or isn't entirely gone. You move on quietly, quickly. You're not alone down here, and it's not the rats this time. You reach another junction, where 3 tunnels meet like old friends who fell out over property lines. You pause. Left leads toward the tannery. The stink's a dead giveaway. Right heads under the prison, which is unpleasant in a different way. You go center, because it feels like the least bad idea in a buffet of poor decisions. This tunnel feels older again, Roman maybe. You see the remains of a mosaic underfoot, tiny tiles forming the curve of something that might have been a dolphin or a particularly disappointed cloud. And then voices. You freeze. They're faint, bouncing off the curved walls like polite intruders. Or down here, I swear, just the badge was real. I'm not supposed to open it. You duck into a niche. A pair of figures pass by. Lanterns high, clothes too clean. City men, inspectors maybe? Or officials. Or worse, historians. You wait for them to pass, heart drumming like someone playing spoons on your ribs. When they're gone, you emerge and laugh, quietly, because even now, in this strange, haunted, ink-dripping sewer maze, you still know your way around better than them. You're a Tosher. You live in what the city flushes away. You eat where others gag. And when the tunnels shift, you shift with them. You head toward home now, wherever that may be. And if you find another misplaced boot along the way, well, that's just Tuesday. The tunnel you've chosen begins to narrow, not in width, but in the way a conversation does just before someone says something they'll regret. The air grows quiet, the kind of quiet that feels held, like it's waiting to see what you do next. Even your boots soften, sloshing more politely, like they've sensed they're not alone. This, naturally, is when you hear a child laugh. Not a scream, not a cry, a laugh. And down here, that's far worse. You stop. The sound bounces again, light, high-pitched, and utterly out of place in a pipe full of despair and biological betrayal. You mutter, nope, and keep walking. Because here's the thing. You've heard sewer sounds before. Pipes moaning like ghosts. Rats squeaking like drunk violins. One time, a frog actually said something that sounded like help. But laughter. That's new. And you're not in the market for sewer children tonight. You round a bend and find a toy. A wooden horse. Small enough to ride a spoon. One eye missing. Tail burned. You stare at it. It stares back. You pick it up and set it gently on the ledge. You do not put it in your pouch. That's how stories start. Bad ones. Further on, you find another Tosher's chalk mark. A spiral with a slash. It means turn back. But someone scratched a second symbol beside it. A triangle. You don't know that one. You keep going anyway. Because what else are you going to do? You push through a dangling veil of moss, or possibly a Victorian beard that escaped a corpse. and find yourself in a long, low corridor. Drips here are slow, deliberate. The water flows more cleanly, a trickle tracing down the center like the world's saddest lazy river. You follow it. It leads you to a door, another one. You sigh, because of course. This one's metal, painted black, hinges rusted. You try the handle. It opens easily, too easily. Behind it, stairs. Down. Because obviously it's down. You descend, the light dims. Your candle gutters, nearly going out. You shield it with your hand and whisper soft encouragement, like it's a skittish horse or your last functioning nerve. At the bottom, a chamber, circular, brick lined, surprisingly dry, and filled with stuff. Shelves line the walls, filled with objects, old ones, bottles, tools, scrolls, things that look like they belong in a museum curated by someone with trust issues and a fascination with mold. In the center, a crate, labeled for the one who knows. You look around. No one else here. Apparently, that's you. You open it. Inside, a pair of gloves, thick leather, sewn with what looks like copper wire. A note sits between them. They don't bite if you wear these. You lift one glove. It hums faintly. You lower it. You don't take the gloves. You've already had one ghost library today. You back out slowly, as if the room might notice and object. Once outside, you close the door behind you and wedge a rock in front of it, just in case. You return to the main tunnel. It feels oddly comforting now. The muck, the squelch, the familiar oppressive sense that everything above ground is built on denial and very bad plumbing. You pass another Tosher, an older woman you've seen once or twice, wears a top hat with feathers stuck in it and calls herself Mayor. No one's argued. She nods at you. Find anything? You shrug. Just the usual haunted furniture and philosophical footwear. She laughs. Standard Tuesday. You walk together for a bit, neither of you talking much, just listening to the sounds of the sewer. Eventually, she peels off, heading toward the riverside. Watch the flow, she says. Tide's shifting. You nod. She's right. You feel it in your boots. A subtle rise, like the city's breathing in. You turn toward the nearest exit shaft, the one beneath the bakery, where the air always smells of crust and confusion. Your legs ache. Your pouch is heavy. You've got at least one good story, and one new reason to avoid bedtime. Not bad, really. You hoist yourself up the ladder, rung by slippery rung, your muscles tired in that solid, lived-in way that means you've earned your supper. At the top, the hatch sticks. You grunt and push harder. It gives. You emerge into a cobbled alley. The moon hangs low. The streets are mostly quiet. A dog barks somewhere. You pull the hatch closed behind you and take a long, deep breath. Regret it immediately. You reek of history, human error, and possibly ham. But you made it out. Another day. Another descent. Another night wrapped in shadow and whisper. You adjust your coat, pat your pouch, and begin the walk home. Past the sleeping windows, past the shops that never think about what's beneath them, past people who will never know how much of their comfort relies on people like you. You smile. You're a Tosher. Not glamorous, not remembered, but necessary. You walk home with the grace of a man who has outrun collapsing tunnels, sidestepped haunted objects, and outsniffed sewer gas long enough to develop a sixth sense for imminent disappointment. Your boots make a soft squelch on the cobblestones, leaving behind a trail that pigeons wisely avoid. A gentle fog is rolling in now, London's own version of perfume, scented with coal smoke and melancholy. Your lodging is tucked behind a cooper's shop, in a building that leans so far sideways it might qualify as a philosophical statement. The door creaks like it's sighing on your behalf. Inside, You light a stubby candle, then collapse into your one chair, wobbly, upholstered in something that might once have been horse. You empty your pouch. Tonight's treasures tumble onto the rickety table. A ring, a bent coin, a doll foot, a suspiciously pristine monocle, a spoon engraved with property of no one, and the mysterious gloves you definitely didn't take, but are somehow here. You blink. They weren't in your pouch. You would have noticed. You poke them with a pencil. They hum again. You make tea instead, or at least your version of it. Boiling water poured over what might be a nettle leaf, and hope. As you sip, you look around your little one-room kingdom, bedroll in the corner, a shelf sagging under the weight of misfit treasures, and a map of London's underbelly you've drawn by hand over the years. Not to scale, not entirely accurate, but more reliable than any official version. You mark a new tunnel on it now, the one with the whispering basin. You make a note. Do not return unless desperate or drunk. You underline it. Twice. Historians still debate whether Toshers contributed to urban cartography. Officially, no, but unofficially, the city's most accurate sewer maps are probably hidden in rooms like this, drawn by people who learned the hard way which tunnels eat boots. You finish your tea. Outside, a bell tolls midnight. Inside, you peel off your coat, boots, and shirt, each with the effort of a man shedding not just clothing, but experiences. Your hands are nicked, your arms bruised, and your socks now stand up on their own. You consider laundry, then laugh, then don't. You settle onto your bedroll. The building creaks, your floor slants, the smell of damp brick and cheap soap swirls around you. And just as you're about to drift off, a knock. Sharp, 3 raps. You sit upright. Nobody knocks here, ever. You grab your lantern and shuffle to the door. Still barefoot, still half asleep. You open it. No one there. Just the fog. And on the ground, a small tin box. You pick it up. It's light. Inside, a folded scrap of parchment. Meet me where the ink drips. Midnight. Wear the gloves. You stare at it for a long time. You check the street again. Empty. You close the door. Set the box on the table. And sigh. You were just about to sleep. Now you're holding an invitation from someone who knows too much. You glance at the gloves. Still humming. You slide one on. It fits. Perfectly. Like it was made for you. You clench your fist. Nothing happens, which is almost more unsettling. You remove it, place it back beside its twin, and return to your bedroll. You tell yourself you won't go, that you're not that curious, that the sewer can wait. But as your eyes close, your dreams slip down tunnels you haven't mapped yet. And somewhere beneath the city, the ink is already dripping. Morning arrives late in your part of London, not because the sun doesn't rise, but because no one bothers to acknowledge it until the smell of burnt toast wafts through the alleys. You wake to the sound of a cart rattling over cobbles and a cat audibly regretting a life decision outside your window. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks. Something in your knee sighs. It's a typical start. You brew another questionable cup of tea and stare at the gloves on your table. They haven't moved. But you don't trust still things. Still things always move when you're not looking, like sewer water. And unpaid debts. You dress slowly, carefully layering shirts, coats, and the psychological armor required to face both rats and people before noon. You head out. Back into the city's underchin. Today's plan is simple. Avoid weirdness, collect coins, avoid being murdered by unknown glove senders. You head for the ladder near Smithfield Market. It drops down behind the butcher's, where runoff meets regret in a narrow stream of mystery sauce. The moment your boots hit sewer floor, You exhale through your teeth. Back home. You feel the tunnel greet you, gently damp, vaguely hostile. You start your route. This section is fairly productive. People in the upper wards drop more than their fair share of valuables. You once pulled a diamond brooch from this stretch, wrapped in a love letter addressed to someone who definitely wasn't the sender's wife. Toshers, you see, are keepers of secrets as much as scavengers of silver. You move from brick to brick, using your rake to sweep aside debris, scanning for glints and shapes, and any object that says, oops. Within the first hour, you find a pewter button, a cracked pipe stem, a coin from Prussia, a fish hook embedded in a sausage. The last one you leave. You pause at the tunnel's bend and eat a biscuit. It tastes like chalk and ambition. You chase it with water from a flask you hope hasn't absorbed too much tunnel spirit. Then, a sound. Not the usual sewer orchestra. It's a rhythm, a beat, footsteps. You duck into a side shaft. Another Tosher walks by. He doesn't see you, but he's wearing gloves, not work gloves. The gloves, yours, or a pair like yours. Copper seams, leather like wet thunderclouds. He's humming. You follow him. Carefully, quietly. He turns down a tunnel that shouldn't be there. You follow. It's narrow, dry, unmapped. You swear it wasn't here yesterday. Then again, that means nothing in these parts. Historians still argue whether parts of London's sewer system were deliberately built to mislead, hide, or trap. Some suggest there are tunnels designed to be forgotten the moment you exit them. Others say those scholars were just claustrophobic and bad with maps. Either way, you're here now, and ahead of you, a door. He enters. You wait. 1 minute, 2, then follow. Inside, light. Soft, flickering. The space is circular. Stone benches line the walls. The center holds a pool. Still water, glowing faintly, as if moonlight had gotten confused and decided to stay. Around the pool stand 5 figures, each wearing gloves, each facing inward. You step in. No one looks at you. The humming continues, low, harmonic, almost like chanting. Then, without warning, they stop. All turn to face you. The air tightens. One figure, tall, thin, coat too long, steps forward. Hail, Finder, he says. You raise an eyebrow. Finder? The gloves answered. That makes you one of us. Great, you mutter. Love it when my accessories make career decisions. Another steps forward. A woman this time. Older. With streaks of silver in her hair and the kind of expression that says she's never once apologized. You've walked where others vanished, she says. You've seen the ink. You've heard the water whisper. You open your mouth to object, then close it again because they're not wrong. She hands you a small item, a badge, Tosher badge, but etched with a spiral. You look down. It matches the mark on your hand. Wait. You pull off your glove. There's a spiral, ink black, stamped on your palm. You didn't notice it, didn't feel it, but there it is, burned in like a symbol of membership in a club no one applies for. You stare at them. What is this? They speak in unison. The sewer remembers. The city forgets. We remain. Your skin prickles. Not fear. Not quite. Something older. Like knowing you're part of something much larger, stranger, and inexplicably damp. They lower their hands. One by one, they turn back to the pool. You step back slowly. Exit the chamber. No one follows. The tunnel behind you has changed. You walk forward anyway. Back toward your map. Back toward what you thought was your route. The sewer shifts behind you, as it always does. But now, it feels like it knows your name. You emerge into a more familiar stretch of tunnel, one that curves gently like a drunk's idea of a straight line. The bricks here wear soot like a second skin, and the air returns to its usual blend of mildew, iron, and boiled laundry. Despair. For a fleeting moment, You pretend things are normal again, that you're just a regular Tosher with a bent rake, a questionable sandwich, and mild sewer induced hallucinations. But your hand still burns faintly where the spiral mark sits. Not painful, more like an itch behind the eyes, a presence. You try washing it in the flow. The mark doesn't fade. You scrape it with the edge of your badge. Still there. Fine. You sigh and keep walking. Back to work. Back to your old rhythm. Sweep. Scan. Step. Squint. You reach the section under Limehouse, a narrow artery that smells faintly of fish, gunpowder, and unresolved trauma. It's a good stretch for trinkets, though. Sailors, drunks, and the occasional fleeing conman have all left their signatures here. You rake slowly, pulling debris aside. A brass button, a coin from Spain, a fish skeleton shaped exactly like a lowercase r, and then something glinting deep in the muck. You squat, reach in. It's a brooch, a golden brooch, shaped like a bird mid flight. You wipe it on your coat. It gleams unreasonably clean, and for just a moment, you feel like the bird's looking at you. Not just crafted, watching. You pocket it anyway, because money. You move on. The tunnels begin to hum, not from water or wind, but something stranger, subtle, a low resonance you feel in your teeth more than here. You pause beneath an old gas lamp. It flickers despite being disconnected. Your breath mists even though it's not that cold. You are not alone down here, which is nothing new. But now the feeling has teeth. You keep walking, because that's all you've ever done. Walked forward. You pass a gate, rusted shut, but behind it lies an old maintenance stair that leads up to the bank district. Rich people flush better things. You stop. Behind you, footsteps. Not echoes, actual footsteps. You don't turn. Who is it? Silence. Then, a whisper. The city above rots. The city below remembers. You finally spin. No one. Just brick, moss, and a slight ripple in the water. You are very tired of metaphors becoming literal. You decide, perhaps recklessly, that you've had enough. You find the nearest ladder and climb out into the world above. It's daylight. Barely. The kind of gray, lukewarm morning that smells like yesterday's soup. You walk through the streets, hat low, coat still damp. People don't notice you. They rarely do. But now you wonder, maybe that's not just because of the smell. Maybe it's part of it. The forgetting, that mark on your hand, it hums when you walk by certain grates. Your fingers tingle when you pass manholes you never noticed before. And the world above feels thinner, like it's just the first layer of something much deeper. You stop by your usual tea stall. Order the usual. The vendor stares a second longer than normal, then blinks. Right. Same as always. You nod. He hands it over. His fingers brush yours. He winces slightly, looks at your hand. Did you draw that? You glance down. The spiral's brighter now, like ink just laid. You shrug. Occupational hazard. You drink your tea. It tastes slightly metallic, not in a bad way, just different. You sit on a bench across from a public fountain, watch as pigeons bicker and children toss crumbs. Life goes on, oblivious. You feel like you're on the edge of something, like the sewer hasn't let go of you, like maybe it never does. Toshers aren't just workers, they're rememberers, they're watchers, keepers of the forgotten roots. And now you're one of them. Not just a scavenger, something else, something older. You finish your tea, head home, boots trailing damp footprints that no one notices, except maybe the city itself, which, if you're honest, has always seemed to keep one eye open. Just for you, you step back into your room just as the fog rolls in again, creeping through alleys and up chimneys like a soft-spoken conspiracy. The gloves are still on the table, exactly where you left them, humming faintly like a lullaby you can almost remember. You take off your coat, now nearly stiff with city grime, and hang it by the door where it can contemplate its choices. You sit, the chair groaning under the weight of today, and let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Your fingers tap unconsciously on the tabletop in the same rhythm you used to use when sweeping. Scrape, scan, lift. You glance at the map you've been drawing, edges curling, lines fading, and add a few more notches. The ink drips just a little too slowly. You don't bother questioning it. You light a candle. The flame flickers like it knows what's coming. Then you pull out the brooch. That golden bird again. It still gleams. Too clean. Too deliberate. You set it on the map, and for a split second, no more, it moves. Not flies, not hops, just shifts, like it's repositioning itself, like it knows where it belongs. You decide to not be afraid, because if there's anything you've learned as a Tosher, it's this. The sewer takes what it wants, but sometimes it gives back. And sometimes it remembers. You lay down, still clothed, still damp, but exhausted in a way that only the underground can earn. Outside, the wind picks up. Below, something groans. But in here, it's quiet. You close your eyes. The gloves are still on the table. The mark on your palm is still there. But the hum is gentler now, softer, like a heart slowing. And in the space between waking and sleep, you hear it, softer than breath, older than brick. Now, breathe. You've made it through another night beneath the streets, another walk through the forgotten underworld of soot, steam, and secrets. The air was thick, the passageways narrow, and the moments strange. But you're here now. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the weight of the tunnels slide off your back like wet cloth left in the rain too long. Let go of the ache in your knees from every slippery rung, every tight corner, every second spent ducking under beams and brushing past shadows that maybe weren't just shadows. The city above can wait. Its noise, its flickering gas lamps, its merchants shouting about oysters and onions and urgent headlines. They're somewhere else now. Far, quiet. Here, you're not a Tosher. Not really. You're just still breathing, drifting, safe. The water has stopped flowing. The tunnel has stopped whispering. Even the gloves, tucked neatly on the table, no longer hum. You'll deal with them tomorrow. Or not. Tonight you rest. The map lies open, lines waiting for the next adventure, the next strange twist, the next place the city forgot. But you don't have to remember it all now. Let the darkness curl around you, soft as moss. Let the echoes fade. And if you dream of underground halls and golden birds and spiral marked doors, that's all right. You're allowed to dream, even down here. Especially down here. Sleep well, Tosher. You've earned it.